You're listening to the A Bit From Within podcast with Felicia Marty. And some of it could just be this time of year. You know, so many of us, I know we kind of go through those seasonal blues, and it's honestly kind of part of the seasons of life, right? Like we have periods that we ebb and flow, just like nature does. And sometimes we feel it during winter, sometimes we feel it during summer. You know, it's not necessarily something systematic that we all feel at the same time. Hello, and thank you so much for joining me today for a new episode of the A Bit From Within podcast. My name is Felicia, and I'm here to share a little bit of what's been going on with me in my life, in my heart, and hope that it kind of connects with a bit from within you too. That, you know, somehow it's like we can pick up on what each other is going through, and if anything, maybe we can get a little inspired, but if anything, at least we can just relate and commiserate with one another. Of course, my goal here is not just to simply complain or to vent, although sometimes that is a natural part of sharing your heart. But this week, you know, it's the week leading up to Christmas that I'm recording this, and I've just been really sitting with so many things, to be honest, maybe even a little bit more than usual because I'm on this vacation. Some of you who've been listening to this for a while know that my regular full-time job is running a photography and videography company here in Denver, Colorado, and I am on my first ever 4-week vacation. I still can't believe it when I say it. You guys know I'm like kind of baffled about taking all this time off. I'm officially over a week into this, and I have to say I'm starting to feel really anxious about it going so quickly and feeling like I'm not doing what I thought I would be doing, which, granted, I guess I didn't have a super clear plan of the entire thing. Last week, you know, when I recorded the podcast, I was only a few days in, and I was saying, you know, it's taking me a little while to kind of get into the groove of being on vacation, being checked out of the inbox, that kind of thing. And now I feel like the parts of me that are still holding on to work a little bit or to thinking about what's happening, or just, you know, honestly, there's just been stuff I've been consumed with that I've had to get done still. And I guess I'm having to have this kind of conversation with myself that, or this realization that like life is, especially as an adult, is filled with things that you just have to do. And it's up to us how we want to approach life with that. Is it, you know, are we going to move through life feeling like I have to do this, I have to do that, this is up to me, it's on my shoulders, you know, where there's almost like a feeling of, I don't know if resistance is the right word, although it could be the right word, as opposed to feeling like, oh, I'm so excited that I get to do this. I'm so looking forward to this. And, you know, I just feel like the balance of that a little bit in my life has been a little out of balance. And maybe a lot of that is just because of how much I've gone through this year and how crazy this year has been. I know that so many of you can relate to that as well. Like this entire year, actually, my friend just sent me this funny kind of like meme, and it says, I have to read this to you. It says, 2021 ends in a few weeks, and although we have our differences, I think we can all agree on one thing. What the fuck was that? And I've been saying this all year that, you know, I think so many of us felt this pressure or this expectation, maybe not pressure, but like just we had an expectation that this year was going to be better than 2020 because 2020 was filled with so much restriction and fear and solitude that we felt like 2021 had to be better than that. And yet I don't think that it was. Like, I feel like 2021 was crazier in a lot of ways. It was more confusing. It was very challenging, very difficult. Not only are you trying to organize your own feelings around the life that you experienced in 2020, but you're navigating this new world, you're navigating an ever-changing normal, you have all of the kind of like slow momentum of getting back into a new life. And for so many of us, we felt like we had no choice but to make up for what we didn't have in 2020. Like for me, that didn't, I mean, I know for some people that like means like traveling or visiting with friends and family or all of that. For me, it more felt like with my business, like all of the business that I lost in 2020, I had to make up for it in 2021. And now I'm sitting here a little bit burnt out from that. And there's lots of things that kind of go into what I'm feeling right now, what I'm recovering from. But I'm just sitting here knowing that I, just like so many of you, are sitting with all kinds of just so many even conflicting feelings. Like there's the depression and the sadness and a lot of fear. I've had a lot of fears coming up lately. And then yet I'm also feeling like as we inch towards 2022, I feel this feeling of hope. I feel a feeling of just, I guess, a little bit of excitement, a little bit of nervousness, but also like I'm trying to really open my heart to the possibilities of the future and not just guard myself or hide, even though honestly, that's what I really want to do right now. Is I just want to turn off my phone, sit with a book, not go anywhere. Like that sounds like paradise to me. And I've been sitting with that on this week leading up to the holidays, up to Christmas. It's the winter solstice week, and it feels like there's still so much to do. There's last minute Christmas shopping. There's certain end of year get-togethers. There's celebrating. There's different celebrations with different people in your family. There's different calls that have to be scheduled with people out of state. There's just a lot going on. And how I'm getting through that right now is I'm trying to simplify wherever I can. And it's like I'm making it kind of this mantra right now. It's like, if I don't get to it, it's okay. If I don't get to it, it's okay. And if I can get to it, then awesome. But I'm not going to bend over backwards to make something happen that I simply can't do right now. I'm in a little bit of a place of surrender with that, where it's just like, there's a lot of things that I feel kind of obligated to do, but if I can't get to it, then it is what it is this year. Like I'm giving myself full permission just to do the best that I can and show up the best that I can, which, I'm still feeling a little bit limited right now in my capacity to interact with others, to be there, to be in community and all that. But I do have to say that this weekend we had a winter solstice yoga class through the Patreon page. So at least it's been once a month. I'm hoping to, re-explore that in the new year, how often we'll be doing live classes. But just had such an amazing, those activities give my soul so much joy. Just being able to talk with other yogis, other people, honestly, who are part of, our little Patreon network through A Bit From Within. It's, if you love listening to this podcast, you'd probably love being a part of the Patreon community, because just remembering all of those things that keep us grounded within our lives, within ourselves, doing the best we can to be a part of, like I was going to say nature, but it's so much more than that. It's just like being a human in all of its forms and doing the best that we can. So remembering to try to take care of ourselves, remembering to step outside of the box, be creative with getting inspired, inspiration through astrology and through yoga and through meditation and just sharing to take care of ourselves. And anyway, getting back to it, this class we did was about the winter solstice, which we're actually having today on the day the podcast is released. It's Tuesday, December 21st is this year's winter solstice. And I don't know if you knew this. I didn't know this until recently, that solstice literally translates to the sun stands still. And I love this as this kind of reminder that from the summer solstice, so from the middle of summer, each day we lose a little bit of light, a little bit more light, and a little bit more light, and the days get shorter and shorter until we move into December. And I think I kept picturing this as like, what would it have been like to be completely unplugged, right? Like living in a little wooden house, no electricity, no running water, none of that, and just somewhere in the world where the day starts to get shorter and shorter and shorter, and almost having this feeling of wondering, like, will this be the year that the sun doesn't rise again? Or what happens? Like maybe you're like a teenager experiencing this, and like you've kind of like, it's getting darker and darker and darker, and what happens? What happens if just each day we're moving further and further away and then there's no sun at all? And what we've learned, of course, now we have so much technology and information. We understand astronomy, we understand the tilt of the earth, and we understand what's happening. But to be in that position where you don't know, to then notice, okay, the day is the same as it was yesterday. The sun is standing still. And then the next day, there's more light. And the day after that, more light. And the day after that. And then a month later, there's so much more light. And so on and so forth. And so becomes the celebration of the winter solstice, this day where the sun stands still, and we can celebrate the return of the sun. We can literally put into our hearts and open up ourselves to this idea that like the darkness doesn't last forever, that eventually the sun comes back, the warmth comes back, the ability to grow and to plant a harvest and eventually harvest that, it will come again. And it's so interesting that we celebrate the kickoff of winter, some of the coldest season, the harshest season, the season that feels very dreary and often kind of weary. And yet we begin it with this remembering of hope. And so last weekend, with all of this kind of inspiration in mind, I put together this yoga class, which if you are into yoga, I have the practice available online on our website, abitfromwithin.com. It's for sale this week for $5, and I think you would really love this practice. What's cool with all the online yoga classes, like let's say you're not interested in being a member of our Patreon where you have access to all the classes. I should count. I think up to this point, we're up to like 75 different yoga practices because we did one a week for the entire year from April 2020 to April 2021. And then I've been doing about 2 a month since then. And so what's cool about buying them through the website, though, is that you always have access to them. And even though this was a winter solstice practice, it's definitely one that I think you could want to come back to again and again, because who doesn't or who can't connect to the idea of needing to kind of open themselves up in the darkness? You know, I know so many of us come to our yoga mats during that time when we're like, I'm feeling crazy, this stuff feels real or stuff feels heavy, and I just need to shed some of the heavy stuff, release it, and open myself up and remember what matters. And I will say that this practice is a really fun one for all different kinds of yogis. You know, oftentimes during solstices, you'll see practices that all have to do with sun salutations. And one of my kind of philosophies behind the gentle yoga that I practice is that sometimes sun salutations don't feel super accessible for all bodies. And so I like to move through yoga in a different approach, still exploring all kinds of different poses and whatnot. And this practice is definitely one, while it is gentle, it's not necessarily, easy, so we're not just sitting and stretching, but we're exploring all kinds of things. And I tell you, I felt sore today. I need to text the other person who was in the class, like how they felt, but I mean, my hips felt sore, my quads felt sore. We did a lot of hip opening, and it's a really wonderful practice. So if you want to give yourself that gift of a yoga practice you can come back to, or even just enjoy this week, it's an hour-long, awesome practice. You can find it at bitfromwithin.com. It's the Winter Solstice yoga practice. And while we're on the conversation about different products available on the website, I do want to take a moment to talk to you a little bit, or share this project that I've been working on. So for those of you, again, if you've been listening a long time, you know that I love astrology, and I love to use the different zodiac signs and what's happening astrologically just to kind of inspire my self-care throughout the year, throughout the month, even throughout the week. And one way I love to do that is to use the lunar cycle for inspiration. So I'm always on here talking about, it's a new moon, it's a full moon. Actually, it was just a full moon over the weekend. And oh my gosh, if you saw the moon this weekend, it was amazing. It was so, if you caught it while it was rising, it was so big and so beautiful in the sky. A really beautiful winter moon. But if you have never tracked the lunar cycles before, you kind of kept up with it, but you've never really written stuff down, that is a practice in my life that I have found so transformational. And it's something so easy to do, right? It's not like you have to have this huge commitment. You can just take a little bit of space to track down what are intentions that you have, what are different self-care priorities, what's happening in your life, what are things you're navigating, even just little thoughts, notes, quick scribbles. And if you kind of keep track of all of that in one place, you can really begin to look back and see different themes that come up in a way that you wouldn't have realized before. I find this especially true with the lunar cycle because, for example, we just had a full moon in Gemini and a new moon in Sagittarius 2 weeks ago. That's always going to happen in, like Sagittarius. It'll either be a new moon in Sagittarius, full moon when the sun is in Sagittarius will always be in Gemini. And then 6 months into the future, sun will be in Gemini, we'll have a new moon in Gemini, and the full moon will be in Sagittarius. So there's always this common polarity that will happen every 6 months. And I find it so fascinating to go back and see, okay, are certain themes from 6 months ago coming up in your life? Are there certain parallels that you can kind of draw on? Or is there a certain theme that you find throughout the year? When you're working with the lunar cycles, it's not something that you can just force yourself to understand with your mind or project it through an entire year. It's something that might take time to navigate and to figure out, and whether it's in the course of an entire year, maybe it's 2 years, maybe it's 3 years before you start to really see certain patterns in your life, or you really learn how to use the lunar cycle to your own best practices, right? Like, are you really good at manifesting during new moons? Are you really good at, maybe you have a ton of energy to get stuff done during a full moon? Only you can kind of track your cycles and figure out how to use the moon cycle for your own best power and benefit. Now, this is something you can do super easily. You can do it yourself without any guidance. You can just get a journal. You can take time to just be aware of the new moon and full moon. You can either program it into your phone. You can write the dates down in advance, any of that. But if you want something super easy, I have created a moon tracker for the year. Now, I did this last year, but I did it and it was good. It was a little bit more simplified. So it had some instructions, and then it just had January, and it would say the date of the new moon, the date of the full moon, what sign it was in, and space to write down all these thoughts. But this year I've really expanded it. So what you get with the workbook is you get the entire list of dates for the new moon, the full moon. You get breakdowns on the zodiac signs, so reminders of which zodiacs are in which signs are in which elements, which modalities. It kind of breaks it down, so if you're not super into astrology, you can gain a lot of insight about the zodiac and kind of let it inspire you. And if you're not into the zodiac, that's still totally okay. You can just use some of the key words from the different signs, or even different traits about the different elements, just to inspire you, right? Just to look at different themes in your life. But so there's tons of information at the beginning. There's a whole thing on like keywords to consider for each new moon. There's all of this stuff about the polarity of the full moon, because like I was saying, there's always going to be kind of this like sister sign opposition thing happening with every full moon. So there's a deep dive into that. And then, of course, there's the 12-page workbook, which this time, instead of doing it like January, here's this moon and this moon, I did it per zodiac sign, so you could have a little bit more of a clear focus. Because in last January, we had a full moon that happened in Cancer, which was corresponding with Capricorn, and then the new moon happened in Aquarius. And so there's kind of different energies happening in one single month. So this time I did it per zodiac sign, and so you could have it a little bit more clear, kind of see the themes a little bit differently, and I think honestly a little bit stronger. And then it also tells you like when the eclipses are going to be happening, when the different solstices are happening. It has room for you to write down self-care priorities, thoughts, and just look back and gain some different insights. So it's I don't want to call it simple in a bad way, but it's very easy to digest and to make your own. And it's 26 pages, so it does have kind of year-end review at the very end. So if you want something that's already put together that can literally walk you through it all, you can get that on my website too. So you can get it for digital download. I'm going to have these on sale from now through January 1st for $10, which is such a steal. It's such action-packed, so much information. You're just going to absolutely love it. It really teaches you how to use the new moon and full moon cycles too. And if you want, you can actually buy it with my whole lunar cycle kit, which is 3 different guides. So it's the moon tracker, which is already so much awesomeness, but then there's an entire separate new moon guide that teaches you how to work with the new moon specifically, and then a full moon guide, which teaches you how to use like that second half of the lunar cycle of the full moon. Both of those come with like 4 rituals for new and full moons each. So much. If you're looking for an awesome gift for yourself, something to kind of kick off the year for you in a very special way that will help you be more mindful, that will give you some kind of fun inspiration to spend some time tuning into yourself, this is an awesome, awesome gift. So you could do the lunar cycle, or you could just do the moon tracker, or you can get any of those separately as well. All available on my website. You guys know me, I'm not usually one for these kind of shameless plugs, and it's not shameless. It's like, I believe so strongly in this, and I pour my heart out into these guides. I think they're beautiful. My color for the moon tracker this year is this really pretty purple color. It's kind of like purples and grays. And then of course I have it very color coded, so you always know like what's a water element sign, earth element, fire element, air element. They're really, really cool. And if maybe it's not your thing, but you know somebody who is super into this stuff, please tell them about it, or maybe you want to gift it to them. I was able to send mine off to like Staples just to have it like professionally printed, and they can bind it so that mine is like actually printed. And I might actually like print some, but if you have the digital download, you can print it yourself. You can just send it off to Staples. It was like $20 to have like the clear covers on the front and have it bound. But you could always just do it however you want, right? Like you could just 3-hole punch it and throw it in your own notebook and throw some extra paper in there. Like you can make it your own. And if you want ideas about that, just shoot me an email when you buy it and I'll give you the full lowdown and all of that. And I got the fancy paper for mine too. So $20, fancy paper, spiral bound, clear cover, front and back. This is not a commercial for that company. You could probably do it through many companies. So that's all I have to say about that today. I'm just so excited about it. I finished it today. I was able to spend a couple hours on it, and I really found my heart kind of just opening, and I'm excited about that. To be honest with you guys, last night I was sitting, just kind of thinking about where I'm at right now. And I feel like there is so much of me that is feeling a little uninspired and a little bit dejected right now. I even found myself in conversation the other night, where I was like, I don't know if I was just so tired or if it's just my brain. It's just like I'm forgetting some words. I found myself just feeling really fuzzy. And that always worries me, right? Like nobody wants to feel that way, kind of like, especially on vacation, right? Like more than ever now, maybe now that I'm a weekend, I'm feeling this pressure to like bounce back. Like I have to be myself now. I've got to be healed. I've got to be ready for anything. I need to be just so grateful for this time I've had off. And it's like, I feel so far from that. I feel just like a little extra tired, a little bit depressed right now, some of those feelings. And some of it could just be this time of year. So many of us, I know we kind of go through those seasonal blues, and it's honestly kind of part of the seasons of life, right? Like we have periods that we ebb and flow, just like nature does. And sometimes we feel it during winter, sometimes we feel it during summer. It's not necessarily something systematic that we all feel at the same time. But I do know that many of us kind of get those, holiday blues. Maybe it's because of expectations, maybe because, one thing that I've been really noticing in myself is this fear of like the shoe dropping. I think there's some really cool things that are coming up in my life with Dave. We have a really cool trip planned for February, hopefully, if everything with COVID goes okay, if we're able to go, if he's feeling better by then. We're really excited for that. We have some changes coming up in our, personal life that I am excited for, but I'm also finding myself kind of holding my breath, not on purpose, but just this, I'm afraid of the shoe dropping, right? And I don't know about you guys, but I think this is a really common feeling during, Christmas, because, we're always surrounded by these magical, stories. Like I've watched way too much like Christmas stories on Netflix. And I've also been, one of the ways I've been occupying my time during my vacation is doing a lot of work on the house, like sprucing stuff up, some projects that I haven't been able to do, a lot of cleaning. And while I do that, like I love to listen to audiobooks. In fact, I'm a little annoyed because you get 10 checkouts through Hoopla each month, and I've already burned through all 10 of mine. And mostly I love this time of year because I can listen to like some holiday romance, which sounds funny, but they're fun. But it's this idea of like everything, miracles happen during Christmas and everything works out great. And I think for so many of us, there's this feeling of, yeah, but at what cost, right? Like it's one thing to have a book where, the main characters fall in love and they buy a castle and it's amazing, but they have the resources to do that, right? For me and with our family, like this year we we were all kind of just decided like, hey, we're going to keep it really simple this year. My sister was able to, she lives in Florida now, and she was able to get a last minute cruise with her friend. So like a 3-day cruise over Christmas. She's so lucky. Like, well, first of all, I would never do a cruise. I am not one for being out on open water. Like, nope. But for her, it is awesome. She's so excited about it. It's her first cruise ever. And so I knew she wasn't going to be home for Christmas anyway, but just feeling like she's like gone, like not even at home, but just like gone on vacation, it's going to be a little bit weird. And you know, with my parents and stuff, we're like, let's give each, I've mentioned this before, we're like, let's give each other the gift of not doing gifts. And, you know, Dave and I have been talking about this quite a bit lately because I've, you know, just been trying to tell him, like, I want to keep it simple. Honestly, and he won't be listening to this, but like, I hadn't even done any shopping for him until last week. Like I didn't really have a strong list of things I wanted from him. I had a couple things like that I was kind of like threw together, and I didn't really know what to get him, although he should be an easy person to shop for, because I tell you what, he always has this long list of things that he wants. Like, I want this and I want this and I love this and blah, blah, blah. And then it's like, do you have people like that in your life where like they're always like giving you ideas, but then when it comes time to like get stuff, then I feel like I draw a blank and I'm like, oh my gosh, what did he want? Like, what was that thing? Can I even get it by Christmas? Like, and so I was just going to keep it simple, like get him 1 or 2 things. And then this is just so how Dave is. And I don't mind sharing this story because it's adorable. It's one of the reasons I love him. But so it was on Saturday, you know, exactly a week until Christmas. I come home from having coffee. And he's like, hey, I'm going to go out Christmas shopping. And I'm like, okay. I didn't know that was on the schedule. Yeah, go on with your bad self. He's like, do you want to come with me? I'm like, I don't actually. And so he's like, okay, that's okay, because I want to get stuff for you. And like 4 hours later, he comes back and he's like carrying all this stuff. And he's like, don't come upstairs, I'm going to wrap your presents. And then he's like, come see all your wrapped presents. And it's like this huge bag and this other huge thing. And then like all these little presents. And I'm like, immediately start feeling overwhelmed because I feel like there has to be an even balance. Now, I will fully own that that is something I need to work on. In fact, it is something that I also see in my sister, and I hate that she's like that. She's always like, it has to be even, like, don't get me something if I'm not going to get you something, like, and I don't feel that way. But you know, with Christmas with Dave, like I don't want to be opening more presents than he is, so then I had to figure out all this other stuff. It was a little bit stressful. And then of course there's this feeling of like, for me, like I want it to be exciting for him, like, and he's, you know, honestly, Dave is an awesome gift receiver as well as he's a great gift giver. Like, he is always so thankful and appreciative for anything. So I know that he'll like what I got him. But I just feel that gift giving pressure where it's like you want to make people so happy. You want to, like, I want him to feel like I really thought about him and I don't want to forget anything that he really wanted and all of that. So I wonder, I really genuinely wonder, like, this is the point in the podcast, like, where I wish I was sitting across from you, looking into your eyes, like, seeing, like, the shaking of the head or the nodding of the head. Like, it can be so stressful. But in spite of all of that, as we get closer and closer to Christmas, you know, I'm just remembering, like, everything is going to be awesome. It is not about presents. It doesn't matter at the end of the day what happens. It doesn't matter, you know, who gets who what, or who wakes up when, or who fought over what. It's just about taking this time to be in the magic of the moment. And that magic could be, you know, sitting with a cup of spiced apple cider, you know, talking with your loved ones, or just having that cozy moment by yourself. Maybe you're sitting by the fire. Fire kind of represents like the sun and the return of the sun and the warmth. So much beauty in that. Maybe it's driving around looking at Christmas lights or getting together with loved ones. And yeah, maybe there will be some anxiety floating around. Maybe this is a really tough Christmas. Maybe it's your first Christmas without certain loved ones, or maybe because you've lost them, or maybe because for whatever reason you can't all get together. It doesn't have to be one or the other, right? Like you can be in two places at once where you can feel what you're feeling, acknowledge the sadness, acknowledge the darkness, but then also just, remember that return of the sun. And for so many Christians, there's a lot around Christ being born and beautiful traditions and rituals that you can celebrate. And for those of you who are feeling a little bit more agnostic, there's so many amazing, even Christmas traditions that are so similar to different traditions throughout the world that just celebrate the return of the sun, whether it's like that Yule log or just decorating for Christmas using items from nature, like the pine trees and the berries, and, bringing in those twinkle lights that kind of remind us of like lighting the flame. So, whatever it is for you, my heart goes out to you the way that it's so much easier to find compassion for other people. And as my heart goes out to you, it reminds me to have that compassion for myself, just to, once again, going back to that motto, just do the best you can this year. Try to take down those expectations of being perfect, or things having to be excellent, or even the pressure that you might feel from others, and just do what makes you feel like you can be present, that you can be satisfied to the level that this year will be, right? Like for some of us, we can't be with our families this year, and it's hard and it's not ideal. But where can we find joy? And what traditions can we do that will bring us something that we're curious about or satisfied with this year? So with that, I will close today's episode. Of course, I have to do our card drawing. I thought we would use the Love and Relationships Affirmators deck today. I already pulled it out. So, pulled out the deck, not the card. So let's do a little shuffling and see what the universe has to say about all of that. Oh, of course, I just dropped all the cards. I was going to try to edit that out, but then I just realized I couldn't do that gracefully. So warmth. I focus on warmth and let it guide all my interactions. No matter how others behave, I choose to respond warmly. With warmth, I can melt any icy exterior. I can soften any hard feelings. I can microwave any pizza. Today, I adopt the saying, kill 'em with kindness, and turn myself into a warm and loving serial killer. Because the kill 'em with kindness part. I love that card, and there's always that magic with these card drawings. Because, the warmth just reminds me so much of the sun. And, it is during this cold time of year, we can be that fireplace, right? Like we can turn on that warmth. We can invite others in. We can care about others and show them kindness. And it doesn't have to be through things. It can be just a kind smile or a laugh or taking time to share something meaningful with them. So I hope that means something to you, and that this just helped comfort you during this holiday week. I'll be back next week post-Christmas with another new episode. I hope you check out all those offers on abitfromwithin.com, and I will talk to you more soon. Thanks so much.